All right, what's up, my brother? So in this video, we're going to be reviewing the new 911 Turbo S that I have as it compares to my McLaren 720. For those of you that have followed my channel for a while, I have put about 25,000 kilometers on the McLaren 720 on rallies. I know this is a little bit of a departure from my standard videos, but I've had so many people ask me on social media, how do I like the Porsche? How does it compare to the McLaren? And I realize there's no real videos online, on the YouTubes anyway, comparing cars like these for heavy duty use, the kind of use that I use them for, which is hardcore driving on long distance rallies with a bunch of your friends. So with that being said, I've got my notepad here with a bunch of love and hates. The hate list is slightly longer than the love, but the love is pretty strong. And at the end of this, I'll tell you which one I prefer for rally driving. So first thing I love about this car, especially for long distance rally driving, and by the way, the definition of a rally is they're usually 3,500 to 4,500 kilometer runs. We call them rips, groups of about 65 cars. We usually get down to smaller groups of around, 6 to 12, depending on who's rolling with us. And we just drive pretty hard. The last one we did was in the Appalachian Trails on the East Coast of the United States. That's our preferred route, although I would love to get out to Europe at some time soon. But experience on this one in the last almost 4,600 kilometers that I did on the rally, the first benefit, the first pro, which is very, very significant. I know that it's not going to seem like much, but the fuel economy on this is extremely good for what this car is. There were several times when I was driving my 720 McLaren where I would have to essentially baby the car because all of my friends were ripping still, and I would end up having to say, you guys go ahead and pass and I'll take it easy back here because I'm getting low on fuel. And you don't know if you're going to make it to the next fuel stop. So you get a little bit of range anxiety, and I saw that in the last rally. One of my friends has a 765 LT, which is essentially the same car as a 720. It's a little bit lighter, slightly different gearing, more aero, same size gas tank, same motor, with a slightly different tune. But there was a number of times we would pull in the gas station and his fuel light was on and I still had about half a tank. So not having to worry about driving the car, how you drive it, how hard you drive it, between the fuel stops, the set fuel stops anyway, is an awesome bonus. This car has 8 gears. It's a dual clutch automatic. The 7th and 8th gear, you don't reach top speed, and you reach top speed in the 6th gear on this, which is about 205 miles an hour from what I understand. Untested, unless it's in Mexico or on the Autobahn. But the fuel economy is really, really good. So highway cruising in this car at 2,000 RPM in 8th gear, I'm doing about 40 kilometers more per hour than I am in my Audi RS5, for example. So it might seem like a trivial thing and nobody buys these cars for fuel economy, but the range you get out of the fuel stops is that much better. And for those of you that are about to go, oh, the fuel tank's bigger, this, that, and the other thing with Porsches, this doesn't have the big fuel tank. The big fuel tank's 90 liters. It wasn't ordered with this. I bought this used with about 3,000 or 4,000 kilometers on it. It's got the 68-liter tank. The McLaren was a 72-liter tank. So even though it's a bigger tank, the McLaren's a 4-liter V8. This is a 3.8-liter flat six. I know some people call it a 3.7, but it's marked as a 3.8 on the engine cover. Fuel economy is good. Next thing I love is the grip. Grip is phenomenal in this car. I wasn't expecting it to be this good. The reason why I bought this car was because the last 3 rallies, a friend of mine had a McLaren before and he traded in for a Turbo S, a 992, which is what I'm in. And I was thoroughly impressed with how fast he was able to navigate tight corners and bends. And the 720, I would push it hard to keep up with him. And even if I'm leading and he's behind me, he's able to keep up with me. So I would say that the grip levels of a Turbo S and 911 are on par with a McLaren 720, which is very, very impressive because this car is heavier. It's about 500 pounds heavier than the McLaren. And it's not, like, it doesn't have a carbon tub or any of those things. Like, this car is not really designed to be light. I would probably define it as more as a GT car, whereas the GT3 or the GT3 RS is more of like a track focused or quartering focused type of car. So grip is phenomenal. Really, really good grip. Under 120 kilometers an hour, this car is definitely faster than the McLaren with the all-wheel drive. If we were to nail it off the line, this will definitely beat a 720 time-wise down the quarter mile. I think speed-wise, the McLaren's going faster down the quarter mile. It's probably trapping about 5 to 10 miles an hour faster when you complete the quarter miles. But under 120, which is where I like to drive in the twisties, obviously. that's where you get the benefit, so that's a super bonus. Brakes, phenomenal. I thought the McLaren brakes were great. The brakes on this are just unbelievable. The massive carbon ceramic rotors, they're just off the chart. The carbon ceramics come standard with the Turbo S. If you have the option to tick that box on any other Porsche, I would definitely get it. Porsche brakes are, they live up to their reputation, so let's just say that. Next thing that I love, comfort. These seats are ventilated. They're, I think, 18-way power adjustable. The seats themselves are more comfortable than the ones that I had in the McLaren. I will say this, though, actually, I'll get to the negative part because the chassis comfort is slightly different, but seat comfort, interior comfort, I think the overall comfort in the cabin, I would say in this car is higher than the McLaren, which I appreciate, because by day 4, usually 4 or 5, I'm kind of like, you know, how's everybody's back doing on the radio? And my buddy in the Porsche would be like, oh, I feel just fine. He's 10 years older than me. So it's appreciated having a nice, comfortable seat in this car. Space. The frunk, I think, in this is probably a little bit smaller than the 720s. The 720 has a remarkably large frunk in it, although with this one you have the back seats, which I'll get to the negatives and those in a bit, but you can throw a couple of duffel bags back there, and there's a storage shelf behind the back seats, which is kind of over where the engine sits. So taking stuff with you on a rally, this, I mean, if you need to put more stuff in your car, this is definitely one to choose. 4-wheel steering, oh my god, love the 4-wheel steering setup on the Porsches. Phenomenal. I wasn't expecting them, like, I knew they had them, but I didn't expect it to be as good as it is. The way that it works is at slower speed, so if I'm in a parking lot or if I have to do a U-turn, the front wheels will turn like this and the rear wheels will turn like this to shorten the wheelbase and I guess tighten up the turning radius. The rear wheels don't move that much. I think it's maybe like 2 or 3 degrees. It's not that much. I know somebody in the comments is going to be like, Rich, it's exactly 3.7 degrees. Okay, cool. But the 4-wheel steering in parking lot speed works like this. On highway speeds where you're going fast, it works like this. So the rear wheel is turned in the same direction as the front wheel. So if you're doing a high speed sweeping bend, the rear wheels are turned in the same direction as the front wheels. Again, they don't turn to the same degree as the front wheels do, but they have a slight pivot left and right, a few degrees. In the 4-wheel steering, going around bends, I think is what contributes to the phenomenal grip levels of this car, with a few other things that I'll get into in a second. But 4-wheel steering, love it. I will definitely be looking for that option in future cars that I own, especially for a rally type of work. The next thing I love about it is that it blends in. It is invisible. The thing I didn't like about the McLaren is that it really stands out for rallies, which makes you a bit of a target when you're traveling at rapid speeds. If there's a cop going the other way, he's going to turn around, he's going to chase whatever car looks like it's going super fast. Porsches, especially 911s, they pretty much all look the same, from a 911 all the way up to a 911S, 4S, GTS, Turbo S. Unless you're like really into the brand and you understand like the subtle differences, you really can't tell the difference. So the thing with Porsches is they just kind of blend in. They're invisible, which is what I wanted. I wanted something a little bit more boring looking, if that makes any sense, because for rallies, it's the best look to have. I want them to chase the bright orange Lambos or the bright red, you know, Ferraris. Just leave me alone. Next thing I love about this car is the fat ass. Oh my god. The hips on this car. It's one of the things that I've always liked and appreciated about Porsches is they've always got that fat ass, and it's just because of the engine layout, because it's a flat 6 and it sits behind the rear wheels. The engineers have to design a very wide rear axle, and it just looks phenomenal. It's got I think 21-inch wheels on the back, and they're 315mm wide. The wheels and just the rear of the car, in my opinion, look phenomenal. I think the rear quarter look of the cars is probably one of the best looking cars on the road, with a subtle look anyway. Next thing is the idle sounds good, and actually I'll start it up because it's getting a little warm in here and I can get the air conditioning running. But let me open up the muffler, which doesn't really sound that much. Like, this is on and that's off. You can't really hear much of a difference. This one has a sports exhaust, but it's got a soft limiter. It sounds really good at idle, in my opinion, especially from the outside. So if we're driving hard and we pull off on a mountain pass, take a break, have a smoke, whatever it is that everybody needs to do, and you kind of like stretch your legs and walk around the car, the flat 6 idle, like that sound, it sounds really cool from the outside. It sounds very powerful. It sounds menacing. The idle sounds good. It takes me back to my old Subaru WRX days. I had a 2002 bug-eyed version one, you know, which has a kind of a similar sound, but that was a flat 4. So the flat 6 has a slightly different sound, but a horizontally opposed engine at idle sounds great. Now we're going to get into the stuff that I hate, that the McLaren probably has an advantage over the Porsche, and there's about a page and a half of that on my little notepad here. So over 120 kilometers an hour, the McLaren destroys this. If it, like stock for stock, once the McLaren is rolling and, you know, the spoiler's tucked in and you just pin it, it just walks away from the Turbo S. And the Turbo S is a very, very fast car, but over 120 kilometers an hour, the McLaren is noticeably faster, like in a sense where you're like, you know, there he goes again. Engine sound is another thing that I hate over idle. It doesn't sound like much. When you're ripping it on the road, it just I don't know, it just doesn't have a cool sound like the McLaren 4-liter V8 has. It's got a twin turbo V8. The motor is designed and engineered by McLaren, assembled and manufactured by Ricardo, which has racing pedigree. This is all done in the UK. So I think overall the flat 6 engine at idle sounds dope, but when you're revving through it and you're driving it, it doesn't sound nearly as good as a V8 or a V10 or a V12 would, obviously. The next thing I don't like about it versus the 720, it's heavy. It's just not as nimble. It doesn't feel agile in your hands. Although the car itself is agile and can do pretty much everything a 720 can, or my last 720 did, it just doesn't feel as nimble and as light in your hands. It feels more robust. It feels heavy and planted on the road, which has an advantage as well. But from a driver's perspective, from the driver's seat, like from the butt dyno, from the feel in the steering wheel and everything, it's a much heavier car. Next thing I don't like, there's literally no carbon fiber anywhere on this car, which is unusual to me. The McLaren had carbon fiber peppered everywhere on the interior, around the vents, the center console, inserts on the steering wheel. You could option carbon down the pillars. The exterior, the entire exterior of my car that wasn't painted was carbon fiber. The front diffuser, the rear diffuser, inserts throughout the car, on the aero, on the rear deck. There was carbon fiber literally everywhere. I didn't realize how much I was going to miss the look of it until it's not in this car. Like literally nothing. This is all piano black in the center console, and it gets dirty and nasty and scratches. Nothing in the door as far as car. There's literally no carbon fiber anywhere on this car. Now again, I didn't buy this new because to order one new, I would have had to wait like 2.5 years, and they're well over 400 grand once you fully option them out Canadian. I bought this used with a few thousand kilometers. It was on the market. I like the exterior color. It's chalk, which is a cool color. Again, you know, it sort of blends in. But every single one that I saw for sale that was listed, and there was a few of them, I didn't see any carbon fiber on them. Nothing on the exterior, nothing on the rear diffuser, on the body panels, around the mirror caps, door sills, front diffuser, like nothing. There's literally absolutely no carbon fiber on a car, and this price range to me is unacceptable. Porsche charges a lot of money for their cars. They're good cars. I think, in my opinion, they should have carbon fiber because of the type of car that it is. But you know, some people are going to say, well, just order one and option some stuff. And I'll say this, the GT cars, this is in GT3, GT4, Spider RS. I put a deposit down on a Spider RS and I spec'd it and I ordered it. I should have that next spring. That comes standard with carbon fiber. You can option a little bit more in certain areas in the car, but the GT cars in the Porsche lineup, they do have carbon fiber. I'm looking forward to taking delivery of that Spider RS. It is going to be dope and it sounds amazing. Next thing I don't like about this car, back seats. They exist. You can throw duffel bags back there, and maybe if you're in a pinch, you can fit a kid back there. If you don't like your kid very much, you take them on a long drive and they'd probably start hating you. But I think in a pinch, having the back seats can be an advantage, and a disadvantage. They're almost practically useless. You know, you really have to slide the front seat up, and I don't think there's any way that somebody can sit behind me. I'm 6'2" and I'm in a reasonably comfortable position for driving, and there's literally no leg room between the back of my seat and the front of the rear seat. So back seats are almost useless, but they exist. I guess it's because 911s have always had back seats, so they keep putting them back there for whatever reason. Another thing that sucks about this car is there's no Android Auto. I'm an Android guy, not an iPhone guy. There's no freaking Android Auto. So to run Waze and everything that I want to up here, because I'll have maps on one phone and Waze running through the display. Luckily, I had my girlfriend on the last rally, so we ran her phone to run Waze, and I had maps on my Android hung up on this thing up over here, which you won't be able to see in the video. But no Android Auto, which in my view, you know, for a 9.9 Turbo S, they make them from 2021 on. no Android Auto, and I don't understand why they would do that, especially at this price point, but it is what it is. Another thing I don't like is it's not like older 911s in two regards. Actually, a few actually. The first one that I'll mention is the doors. I've got some friends with some older, like more vintage-ish, you know, like 911 turbos with a big whale tail, like kind of like the original ones, the Widowmakers as they used to call them. And if you open the door and you close it, it has a very heavy, well-engineered clunk, like click sound. It's very difficult to describe unless you've ever gotten in and out of a older Porsche 911. I'm talking like probably 80s and older. I don't know what the 90s were like, but the older, like the original gens, and I think it's one of the things a lot of people regard them for and like them for, is that there's a very satisfying door closing sound. The other thing that I don't like, that I also mentioned below that, is there's no start-stop button in these cars, which is stupid. Instead, what they have is this fake key thing over here to the left of the steering wheel, and I understand why they do it. It's a throwback to the old, I think it's the Le Mans days, because what they would do is they would start across from the cars. They would be lined up, and the race drivers would have to run over to the car, get in, put the key in, start it, and then put it in gear to drive it away. And the reason why they put the keyhole on the left-hand side in 911s, for those of you that are newer to these cars, is the race car driver would get into the car with the key in their left hand, and as they were putting the key in, they could put the car in gear and start it at the same time, and usually get away from the grid before the other cars. So there's an advantage from a racing perspective, and I understand why they put on the left-hand side a little turny knob. Like, it's keyless, it's just you have to turn this stupid thing that is supposed to look and feel like a key, but it's not a key. It's like, it's not a start-stop button, it's a start-stop knob. And I don't know, it just doesn't make sense to me. Like, if you're gonna keep with the old vintage, you know, like the traditional everything that's in the car, flat six, rear engine, back seats, why not give me the satisfying feeling that you get of closing the door? You don't get that. You get everything else. The thing on the left-hand side, the key, the back seats, the flat six engine, all that sort of shit, rear engine setup, but you don't get the satisfying door. Give me everything if you're gonna give me this stupid thing. But I just don't like it. Some people might like it. That's just my opinion. The trim is boring on the inside of the car. The interior trim of the McLaren with the fold down screen, it's a full screen and it would fold down, and it's all digital, and you could see everything on the screen, and it was well positioned. I just think the interior of this car, it's like a lot of the switches and buttons, like what I hear a lot of people say, it feels very high quality in here. Like if you watch like the automotive reviewers, it's very high quality interior and everything feels like it's high end, and you touch it and it's like leather and stitching and it's all perfect and blah blah blah. I don't like this piano black shit. A lot of the switches and buttons feel like they come out of the Volkswagen parts bin. Identical feel to a lot of steering wheel buttons here, you know, for example, feel exactly the same in my Audi RS5. So you're paying a huge premium for these cars, and I don't believe you're getting, like, even the turn signal stocks, the shape and everything, and the buttons on the end feels exactly the same as my Audi RS5. So I think the interior trim leaves something to be improved on. Oh, I forgot to mention with the comfort on the Plus, I just remembered ventilated seats. Turn that on now and air condition my butt as I talk. Next thing I don't like is, one of the things a lot of people say is these cars are as reliable as a wood burning stove, which is one of the reasons why I got the Porsche. And to be honest with you, I never had any problems with my McLaren mechanic wise. What I did have problems with, over my head, the glass that was built into the doors would crack, it would stress crack. I had them replaced like 3 or 4 times. Random shit like air brake fault, which didn't stop you from driving the car. It's just you'd have to go into the dealer and they would reset some sensor, and they could get it done very quickly. But this car, I got a check engine light on my first rally within the first 1,000 kilometers. It's nothing detrimental to the car and driving it, but it's like, I had a friend with a code, you know, he read it, and it's something to do with exhaust manifold pressure switch or something like that. So, you know, those people that tell you that these things are as reliable as a wood burning stove, maybe, I mean, but I got a check engine light on my first rally, so that's just my experience I'm sharing. Repairs take longer than a McLaren, which I was surprised by, because this is German engineered. A lot of parts are shared throughout the lineup with Volkswagen, Audi, Lamborghini, Bentley, or, you know, whatever's in their you know, inventory list of cars that the Volkswagen Group sells. But the part that I need to replace for this is going to take 3 weeks. It's just a exhaust valve switch, which really shouldn't take 3 weeks. It's something they should be able to access relatively quickly and repair, but it takes a long time to book it in for service, and the time frame to get the part in my opinion, is way too long. If there was a part needed for my McLaren 720, you know, if I had, you know, like a light on, or it said, you know, the sensor or whatever, I could literally bring it in the next day. I didn't have to call or book. I had the service girl's number in my phone. I could text and be like, hey, I got this warning light, I'll drop it off Monday. She'd be like, cool. I drop off the car. She would text me within the same day and say, parts ordered. It should be ready for you, you know, within 3 or 4 days. So I found my experience anyway dealing with a McLaren with repairs is I did need to make more visits to the dealer that I liked. It was never mechanical failures or anything that would strand me. It was just stupid bullshit, like, again, air brake sensor, you know, something like that, or the glass would crack on the top and they'd have to swap that out. But it just seems like for a car of this class and caliber, and especially the price point, which is basically the same as a McLaren, you'd expect the servicing to be a lot more rapid or better than a McLaren. I mean, it's a boutique car brand. There's only one dealership in Toronto. Only major cities have McLaren dealerships, whereas Porsche dealerships are everywhere. You'd think they'd be able to source the parts better, but it is what it is. Next thing I don't like, and I'm almost done on the don't like list, the aero is lacking versus the McLaren. Now, this thing has phenomenal grip, like I said earlier, but it just doesn't have the same level of aerodynamic design that the McLaren did. For example, the door on the McLaren was basically a double door. So there's this groove. You guys can go back to my older videos, but there's this groove between the door and the outside that would channel cold air into the hot radiators towards the back. And there's another groove towards the lower end of the door that would extract hot air from the front brakes. That's completely missing from a car like this. And I understand the Porsche engineers figured out ways to sort of make it work and have good brakes and have good aero and all that sort of stuff, but it doesn't have the aero presence of a supercar. And I don't think this is a supercar. I would call it a car that behaves like a supercar. It's an everyday supercar. It's a car that can drive as fast as a supercar, but I wouldn't call it a supercar. It doesn't have doors that go up. It doesn't have the extreme aero. It doesn't have any carbon fiber on the exterior. The aero on the outside of the car is very, very basic in my opinion. There's no under tray underneath the engine back there. I had a look under the car. There's under tray under some of the car leading up towards the back, but the rear part of the car, like where the engine is, it's completely exposed to everything. Debris, road debris, rocks, everything. There's no rear diffuser to channel air up to get the downforce or anything like that. There's no rear diffuser in the rear bumper. It's just completely open under the engine back there. And I mean, I'm not an engineer. Again, the Porsche guys managed to figure it out and make it work, and it's proper and the car feels planted and everything like that. But I just wonder why they didn't emphasize more on flowing, like channeling the air over the car to create more grip, which I think this could have. But anyway, I'm probably nitpicking, and some people are, oh, it's not a McLaren, you don't know what you're talking about. Okay, fine, murder me in the comments. The next thing is it lacks tire temperatures. If you're driving a car like this in this like my Audi RS5 has a gauge that tells you the tire temperature and the pressure. This tells you the tire pressure, but instead of giving you the temperature so you know when it's up to temp and you can drive the car harder because warmer tires are stickier, it's got a bar that basically goes from 0 to 100. And I mean, it doesn't tell you the temperature of the tires. The McLaren did, other Volkswagen products like my Audi RS5 do. It's just a small thing, but it's a small thing that bugs me that I'm used to in my other car. My 720 had it, my RS5 has it, this doesn't have it. And again, at this price point, I think it's unexcusable. Maybe it's in there somewhere in another menu, but I can't find it. I went looking for hours. I've gone through all the menus, couldn't find it, but it is what it is. Next thing I don't like is it rides rougher than the McLaren. So the McLaren has a hydraulic suspension system. I think it's called ProDrive or something like that. It is phenomenal. It is absolutely amazing. There's 3 modes: comfort, sport, and track in the McLaren. And when you put it in comfort, the chassis is legitimately comfortable, much more comfortable than this. This rides rough. This has more comfortable seats. It has a more comfortable interior. I would love the McLaren hydraulic system in a car like this, because the spring and strut setup in this, in normal mode, is still too rough in my opinion. They should have done a better job, especially for a car in this category, being a GT type class car. It doesn't make it a deal breaker for me, but it is noticeably rougher riding than the McLaren was. So there's that. It's growing on me. The flat 6 engine, I love. The rear engine layout, I've now gotten more used to. It's not something that is common at all in the automotive industry. Most supercars are mid-engine because it balances the car a little bit better. This is rear engine, which puts more of the weight over the rear wheels, which is great for quarter-mile launches because all the weight's over the rear wheel and it just digs in and just takes off like a bullet. It also has all-wheel drive, which adds to the traction as well, which also, you know, contributes to the rapid speeds that you can achieve under 120 kilometers an hour. But it is a layout that is growing on me. I'm starting to see and understand why Porsche guys like this car. This is the first Porsche I've ever owned. You know, I went right to the top. I'm like, give me the 911 Turbo S. So it is cool, you know, from that regard. It's different, it's unique. So the last thing I wanted to show you is the stupid display, which I'll make a quick video here on my phone. So if I hold this like this, you can see 3 displays in front of me right now. You've got your tachometer with your speed in the middle. You've got your speedometer over here, which is unnecessary because you have the speed over here. And over here, you've got some random, you know, metrics that you need, like fuel range, oil temperature, oil pressure, voltage, and stuff like that. What you don't see is there's 2 more gauges here and here. And one of them happens to be your fuel gauge. Who the hell designed a car where you can't read the goddamn fuel gauge? You can't tell how much fuel you have in this car. Thankfully, you get this thing over here in this gauge cluster, which tells you your range, which gives me some idea. But if you want to, as you're driving, see how much fuel you've got, you've basically got to go like this and read it like this. So you've got your fuel level, and over here you've got your boost gauge at the top, which you'll never see, so it's freaking pointless. And on the left-hand side, you've got your external temperature and your clock, which again, if you're driving normally, you'll never see any of these things. So let's stop that. With that being said, that is just dumb. I mean, for a car company like Porsche to do something like that makes no sense to me. I don't know, maybe they've always done cars like that in the past. I've sat in other older Porsches and you can see the gauges as far as I can remember, so I don't know why the hell, you know, I'm driving along and I'm ripping through the bends and I'm like, okay, let me check my fuel level, and it's like, hold on a sec, as I'm doing this shit, oh, okay, there it is, as I fly off the fucking road. It just doesn't make any sense to me. It's poorly engineered and stupid and dangerous in my opinion. So that's the only things that I can say that I don't love about the car. Now, as far as what I give the win to, as far as rally use, if you're shopping around for a car for long distance, hard driving with your friends on rallies, the kind of stuff that I do, which is very unique. I understand most people watching car videos or maybe looking for a comparison between these 2 cars might not necessarily use them for that. I think most people that buy supercars or McLarens or cars like this, they're cars and coffee guys, like, hey babe, get in the car, let's go get some ice cream. And that's kind of what they use them for. They hardly drive them. They don't put on very many miles. I drive my cars and I drive them like I stole them. This car for rallies, in my opinion, I think overall is a better rally car than the McLaren. I said it. There you go. The 720S is not as good as a long distance rally car as the Porsches, and I'm going to say because of the comfort of the seats in the interior, the grip is very good. It's invisible when you drive it compared to the other cars on rallies, because anybody with a bright orange Lambo or a bright red Ferrari will get the attention of the popo before you will. So in my opinion, it's just as fast as those cars, in some circumstances actually faster, meaning like under 120, which is where you're doing most of your twisty road driving. This is a great rally car with some slight minor flaws for a lot of money. So anyway, there you have it. You guys let me know what you think, and I'm sure there's going to be some correcting from the Porsche boffins or people that hate me now for saying some mean things about Porsches. Oh my god. But suck it up, buttercup. It is what it is. It's factual. It's just my experience and opinion. I'm only, again, speaking from experience. I don't talk about cars that I haven't driven or own or have a good deal of experience on. So you tell me what you think in the comment. Pin below in the top comment a bunch of useful links. And what I'll do is on the top right, I'll throw up some interesting videos that I've made in the past tied into longer car drives that I've done. You might find those interesting because I'm not just a guy that's red-pilled and talks about unplugging with a best-selling book. I also am a very, very strong car enthusiast, which is why you see most of my videos recorded in one of my cars. Anyway, hope you guys have an amazing day. Peace out.
I don't ever slow up, no I don't take shit. I got no love for the fakeness. If you wanna play tough and wanna hate this, I'll always show up.